Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlauher here with my first Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast of 2025. I'm sure you have been waiting patiently for this to be released, and I'm glad to present my thoughts on this year's hurricane season forecast. Now, I want you all to stay to the end of the video as I have something very cool to share with you. So please stick around for that. To start off the video, here's a look at the latest Coral Reef Watch daily sea surface temperature anomalies from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And what we have right now is a neutral-ish type pattern that is in place where we have really warm sea surface temperatures here off of Peru and Ecuador, where we have a little bit of slit of remaining cooler than normal sea surface temperatures known as La Nina. But because we look at both of these and blend them all together, we declare this as a neutral setup right now that is in place over the equatorial Eastern Pacific. And why is this important? Because this is going to influence our Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast for 2025 here. Now, when we look at the Gulf of Mexico, this is running certainly above average, anywhere between about a half of a degree all the way up to 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. And when we look at the main development region of the Atlantic, this is running slightly warmer than average. We have gotten rid of a lot of the below average sea surface temperatures out across the far eastern Atlantic, right off of Africa, off of the Cabo Verde Islands. These sea surface temperatures here were a lot cooler thanks to the trade winds, but since those trade winds have began to relax a little bit, sea surface temperatures here have quickly rebounded to now being above average. Interestingly enough, sea surface temperatures up here are certainly below average right off the coast of New York. So now looking at the actual sea surface temperatures here from Alex Borham, this is the cyclonicwx.com website, which I will frequently be using during this year's Atlantic hurricane seasonal routine outlooks. More on that towards the very end of the video. But we can see here, anything within this yellow line is deemed favorable for tropical cyclone formation. When you have very little wind shear, you have a lot of moisture in the deep layers of the atmosphere, this would be a really favorable zone. South of this yellow area, so all in here in the Caribbean, way down here in the deep tropics, and even in portions of the Gulf of America / Mexico, however you want to call it. I'm still confused on what should I, is it Gulf of America or Mexico? But either way, sea surface temperatures there over the Yucatan Channel are actually quite warm. We're at about 27 degrees Celsius. Now, looking at those temperature anomalies right now, similar to with what we just looked at, again, slightly below normal to near average here off the coast of Africa. And then, of course, over the southwestern Atlantic, over the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico, we are running slightly above average. And then, of course, more importantly, we have a really warm Iberian Peninsula current that still remains in place off the Azores, off of Portugal, as well as across the UK, the United Kingdom. And this is important because if all this warmer water is able to get down here into the deep tropics and then circulate here into the main development region, we could be looking at a more active Atlantic hurricane season than what our climate models are currently projecting. So our sea surface temperatures here currently over the Gulf, this is from the University of Miami. This was updated yesterday, so this is always a day behind schedule. But nonetheless, this is what we're seeing, and in much more high-resolution detail, we can see sea surface temperatures here right around 27 to about 28 degrees in Celsius, okay? So that's pretty warm for this time of the year. And then don't think this is all cold up here or over here. This is basically around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. So looking at our sea surface temperature anomaly here, for basically as of yesterday, again, this is delayed by 1 day. You can see in high resolution map, seeing sea surface temperatures here, especially with this loop current, how it kind of does this and it kind of goes out. Very well illustrated here, actually. Probably one of the most detailed images you'll find on the channel, thanks to courtesy here of University of Miami. Sea surface temperatures there are about a degree Celsius above average. We're also seeing some really warm sea surface temperatures with some eddies out across the northwestern Gulf of Mexico / America. So now that brings us to this point in the video. What is the forecast when it comes to our sea surface temperature anomalies just in time for the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season? So as of March 31st here, this was basically rendered in early April. Technically, this is the last day of March, but who cares, right? April is when this was made. And what we have here is our sea surface temperature forecast. And what it's showing here is a very warm Atlantic still. And the models do think that this portion of the Atlantic here should be able to recover enough to where we need to be on the lookout here over central portion there of the Atlantic, the main development region, into the Caribbean especially. Sea surface temperatures here will be almost a degree above normal, and that's just added heat to the oceans, added heat and energy to the atmosphere for these tropical cyclones. We can look back at Hurricane Milton of last year when that thing really took off very quickly in the Gulf of Mexico. And that is because we had a lot of energy. We had a very warm sea surface temperatures, a very favorable thermodynamic profile in the atmosphere, not much shear to worry about. And that's why Milton really took off and proved us wrong on how intense these hurricanes can get under such warm sea surface temperatures. And then, of course, you have your El Nino or La Nina, your ENSO out there. And we're looking at a neutral ENSO for this Atlantic hurricane season coming up. So looking at our CFS, pretty much similar, although the CFS is definitely picking up here on much cooler sea surface temperatures off of Africa, what we call the Atlantic Nina. So that's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing over here. Instead, it's over here. And this works in the same way like it does over here. It suppresses a lot of tropical formation out of the main development region. And we end up seeing not as many named storms. But this is just a forecast, and a lot of you are going to believe this. But I want to make it clear that this is based on what we saw back in mid-April when this was rendered. So we have to understand that this is going to change with time, and a forecast is just guidance. It does not mean, oh, it's going to actually happen. We're actually going to have below average sea surface temperatures. We don't know yet, because after all, this is the spring predictability barrier that we're facing right now, and a lot can go wrong between now and August. So this look at the North American multi-model ensemble here, the NMME, and it's also showing the same thing. Below average sea surface temperatures off of Africa, off of the Cabo Verde Islands, and then near average sea surface temperatures, which is clearly not going to happen at this point, because I can tell you already, sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean right here are actually running about a degree or two above average. And this is showing sea surface temperatures around normal. Okay, I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think so. And then when looking at the Eastern Pacific here, cold ENSO, cold neutral conditions are going to prevail. So that leads us into this. What is our latest total accumulated precipitation anomaly looking like for the months of June, July, and August? Right now, based on those sea surface temperatures being below average, it thinks that the West African monsoon season is going to be very inactive this year to near average, with slightly above average precipitation anomalies in the main development region stretching into the Western Caribbean. And then when we look at August, September, and October here on the North American multi-model ensemble, it is showing slightly more active conditions here in the central main development region. But you can see, because of those below average sea surface temperatures, it thinks that, oh, there's not going to be any tropical cyclones existing in this area, maybe one at least. I mean, the model could be right or it could be wrong. This is based on our latest guidance as of April the 8th when this was made, when this was rendered, and so a lot can change. And then, of course, down here, a very inactive West African monsoon season, supposedly, when you look at that. But there are different models that we look at, too, to give us different outcomes. And this is the CAN-SIPS model. This is basically the Canadian version of its climate outlook or its climate model out of Canada. And what it's showing here is well above average precipitation anomalies over basically over the Caribbean, over the southwestern Atlantic, and a more active West African monsoon season portrays here for June through August. Now, when we look at August through October, it is again looking at a very active season coming off of Western Africa over the main development region, over the Caribbean, and over the southwestern Atlantic. And that is why that just because the North American multi-model ensemble shows one thing, and what you're about to see here is the CFS, the climate forecasting system, shows something similar to the North American multi-model ensemble, does not mean that we can discount that, oh, this hurricane season is going to be a very below average one, David. It's going to be very inactive. Why are you talking about this? Because I know my stuff. We're in the spring predictability barrier, and I know for a fact this is going to change. And I think we're still going to have a near average to slightly above average season. So looking at the CFS here, also indicating similar to the North American multi-model ensemble, showing a really inactive West African monsoon, although slightly above average here over Western Africa. And then over here, of course, across the Caribbean, looking at above average. So yes, there is a mixed signal here on the CFS at a mediocre looking Atlantic hurricane season. And then looking at August, September, October, pretty much the same thing. Although, I mean, this is straight up ridiculous. It's showing that pretty much everywhere here is going to have very little to no hurricane tracks this hurricane season. Who could believe this model? Literally, who can? And that is why I'm taking this with a grain of salt. So now, what does the ECMWF indicate? Something similar, to be quite honest. A really, really inactive West African monsoon season here, especially for August, September, October, including for the main development region. Really far below average when it comes to the chances or the probability of above average precipitation. Where it's going to likely be above average here is over the Western Pacific, over Australia, and over the Indonesian and Indian Ocean, especially for the Northern Hemisphere. Typically, that's when a lot of this lights up anyways, and the Southern Hemisphere closes down for its cyclone season. So now, when looking at the seasonal forecast here from the SEAS S5 model, basically on its analysis, for the peak of hurricane season, and what it's now projecting is anywhere between 12 to 19 named storms, roughly, with an average mean of 16 named storms, which I'm a bit surprised given that what we just looked at here is below average over the Atlantic, which means that what you see here does not always portray to a below average hurricane season, if that makes sense. So again, we are looking at this value right here, this value, the latest one as of right now, showing us that, and again, 12 to 19 named storms with an average mean of model ensemble forecast calling for at least 16 named storms, or 15.8. Close enough, okay? So speaking of that, here is what the ECMWF, the number of named storms and hurricanes it is predicting right now. So it is now predicting 15 named storms right now. So when you up the 8 to the 0, it makes 16 named storms with an average of 14.2 climate mean named storms for an average hurricane season. So in other words, this is looking like it's going to be a slightly above average hurricane season for the Atlantic, with a below average season likely for the Eastern Pacific, similar to with what we had last year, and a near average to slightly below average West Pacific typhoon season as well. Now, looking at the hurricane or typhoon frequency forecast, we're looking at a near average number of named storms over the Atlantic, below average for the Eastern Pacific, and also below average for the Western Pacific for typhoons, which is good news for anyone that lives in Taiwan, the Philippines, in Japan, or even in portions of Korea up here. Good news there, but doesn't always mean that, oh, we're not going to get any landfalls, because it only takes one typhoon over this region of the world, one hurricane over the Atlantic, or one named storm over the Eastern Pacific that turns up and hits, like, say, Baja California, if this goes out to sea and hits Hawaii, it's all that matters. It makes a whole difference in the impacts. It only takes one named storm and one hurricane or one major hurricane to do a lot of damage. So now, what are my thoughts of this year's Atlantic hurricane seasonal predictions? What are my thoughts? And everyone's wondering about that. So we're going to go from the top to the very bottom. Tropical cyclone risk is predicting 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. Colorado State University is predicting 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. The University of Arizona is predicting 15 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. North Carolina State University is predicting 12 to 15 named storms, 6 to 8 hurricanes, and 2 to 3 major hurricanes, which again, all of these are at around average of our average number of major hurricanes. Now, NOAA and the UK Met Office have not issued their forecasts yet, so that's why there is non-available or not applicable NA for that reasoning. But however, my forecast is out. And on the ensemble forecast, I am predicting 10 to 15 named storms for this first seasonal prediction forecast, 5 to 8 hurricanes, and 2 to 3 major hurricanes. And because of the mixed signal and the uncertainty with the climate predictability, or the spring predictability barrier, that's what I was looking for. That is why I have put in 10 to 15 named storms for that reasoning, which is slightly below average to near average for this time of the year, or for the climatology mean for the Atlantic. And my control member run is predicting 9 to 14 named storms, 4 to 7 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes. So now the details are here on the Colorado State University website as well. You can follow them on X. Link in the description below this video, but you can see named storms are 17 and the average is 14.4. So we are looking at a above average season, not too terribly super above average like we had last year, where the initial forecast was for 23 named storms. This is a lot lower, but still a busy season is nonetheless likely here, according to Philip Klocksbog at CSU. Hurricane days 35, major hurricanes 4, and major hurricane days are at 9. And here's the most important thing, folks, and I'm gonna box this in yellow. Oh, that's black. So looking at this, the accumulated cyclone energy this year is expected to be 155. That's definitely above average. And west of 60 degrees, 93, which is also above average. And the net cyclone energy is looking at about 165, which is above the 135. So all in all, a very busy season, both with named storms and accumulated cyclone energy, or ACE for short. That's basically quality over quantity. Another thing that I like to look at too is the MJO, or the Madden-Julian Oscillation. We're going to be looking at this quite frequently in my routine tropical weather outlooks, beginning on the 26th. I'll have to clarify that. Hold on. Yeah, the 28th is when we'll be starting those outlooks. All right. So looking at the latest European model, this is basically with what we're seeing right now. Basically, when this is in phases 6, 7, and 8, it is deemed unfavorable to very unfavorable for the Atlantic. Okay. This is different for the Pacific side. This is different for the Atlantic side, and what you're looking at here is unfavorable conditions, very likely. But of course, who could see this when it's the middle of April? It's going to be unfavorable nonetheless right now. We're not supposed to be having any named storms in the first place until at least June or July, when the Atlantic hurricane season begins. And then, of course, over here, when it gets into phases 2, 3, and 4, which is over Africa and over Indonesia, over the Indian Ocean, that's when it is deemed favorable to very favorable conditions over the Atlantic. That's when we get more of our named storms. It's when we get more production going on. And right now, both of the models are kind of in basically the null phase, or in phases 6 and 7 over the next couple of weeks, which means the Atlantic is not looking very much activity, of course, to be expected in middle of April. So now this is the cool part. In my routine tropical weather outlooks, some of this will be available, some of it won't, depending on availability and latest data that these sites provide. But rest assured, let's kind of put like a check mark on each of these, right? So rest assured, I will be providing real-time satellite images with my routine tropical weather outlooks. I will be providing latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlooks from the National Hurricane Center. By the way, they do go out to 7 days, which is quite awesome. And I will be providing any graphical tropical weather updates when there's a named storm, such as when we had Helene, when we had Milton last year, both very highly impactful hurricanes for Florida and for the Southeast. And of course, we will be using weather model data almost every time. But this stuff right here that I've circled in green is only available when we have TDR missions, tail Doppler radar missions from recon aircraft that you see down here, especially from the P3 Orion that uses this and scans storms. And then vorticity plots, I'm going to try using that a little bit more in these routine tropical weather outlooks, including with shear values as well. The only thing, again, that's going to be limited here is going to be this right here is our graphical outlooks on a named storm, because that only occurs if we do have a named storm. And then you can only get updates if you do subscribe to the channel. More on that in just a little bit. But I did want to make a very important announcement before I close this video down, is that the next Atlantic Hurricane Seasonal Outlook and Forecast is scheduled for May 16th. Okay. Yeah, that's seasonal. So May 16th, that is going to be, and to clarify, that is going to be, I think, a Thursday or something. It's going to be in the middle of the work week, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And then the first routine outlook is scheduled for May 28th. All right. So that's when I will do my outlooks almost every day here on the YouTube channel. So if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so right now. It really helps out a lot because, again, I do enjoy making these tropical weather videos for you all as often as I can. And my routine outlooks will go from May 28th all the way through November 15th. So yeah, make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already. Check out our Weather Force Discord server with the link in the description below this video. And also you can follow me on TikTok, because I will be doing updates there as well on my TikTok platform, including on Twitter as well, or on X, that is. All those links are in the description below this video. But until next time, I'll be back with you more tomorrow.